Hey, Lloyd, tell us about how you've seen the contract management process evolve.
Sure. So it's evolved. It's evolved in a number of ways. If you think about where contract management was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, the nature of contract management has changed based on the relationships that have grown globally, right? And so if you think about quite some time ago, where you had this contracting process that really started with the whole contract creation, right? Where you typically had some standardized templates that you would use, and as a starting point for your negotiation with the person you're transacting with, and with that, you then moved into the contract negotiation phase. And when you're in that negotiation phase, you probably had some alternate clauses that you had to choose from, either in paper form or in a system of some sort. And then once you've negotiated the contract, you get that contract approved. And it was this very straightforward linear process to manage the contract, right? So in approvals, right, it was something very conditional and simple. If the dollars exceeded a certain amount, then you go and get VP approval, and then ultimately you execute the contract. Now I'm making this more simplistic than even it was then, but a lot of companies try to implement this type of linear structured process, and to that end, a number of technology companies did the same thing. They started to create contract management systems that managed standardized templates, and then they would wrap wizards around those templates, right? So that when a user comes in, they can pick a template or fill out a wizard, and it kicks out a contract. Then they start to negotiate and pick their alternate clauses, and it all looked like this very nice, neat little process, right? But this, over time, quickly failed the larger percentage of contracts that were being managed, because standards became the exception. As the global marketplace took hold and relationships were formed across borders, you had to take into account regional laws and regulations and make sure those were incorporated into contracts. And then all of a sudden you're using third-party paper or other parties' paper, whatever you want to call it. And all of a sudden, when you start introducing someone else's paper, that blows this whole thing up, because all of a sudden you're introducing a contract that doesn't fit into your world of contract management. And so if you, in that vein, you start to fall, it breaks apart from the get-go, right? So if you're introducing third-party paper, that takes your alternate clauses out of the equation. Oftentimes the conditional workflows and systems were built based on your templates. So if you're using somebody else's paper, that takes this out of the equation. So very quickly, you see how this tends to fall apart, right? And so if 90% of the contracts done were standard and on your own paper, these systems would work terrifically, right? But research has shown that really upwards of 60% are done on your own paper, which leaves 40% exposed to risk and very manual processes. Okay, so as you think about contract management and the way it's evolved over time, not only has it become more complex just in and of the contract itself as trading partners do more negotiation, but when you start introducing other parties' paper and other factors into the equation, it makes it that much more complex and harder to manage. So what you can do ultimately when you look at a contract, regardless of whose paper it's on, you can take a look at the terms and conditions that are within it, and you can extract the meaning behind the terms and the intent behind the terms without actually summarizing the contract itself, right? And this is important because ultimately your business is going to be driven by knowing the meaning, intent of the contract versus simply a summary of the contract. So hopefully that helps.